Why do avoidant attachers bother with relationships at all? Recognizing one of you has an avoidant attachment style doesn't mean the relationship is doomed to fail, but there's some critical information you both need. First, we'll unpack what an avoidant attachment style actually means, the real psychology, not the pop version. Second, most people don't know there are actually two versions of this style, and you need to know which one you're dealing with because they're different in some fundamental ways. Third, we'll get into what partnership with an avoidant attacher actually looks like from the inside. Some of this may feel familiar, some of it may surprise you. And fourth, we'll talk strategy, what a realistic path forward looks like for both of you. Now, my next video is going to be a side-by-side comparison of the relationship experience of you and your partner. Subscribe with notifications on because that one will help you understand each other in completely new ways. All right, let's get into it. Look, the term avoidant attachment gets thrown around a lot, weaponized, and sometimes even confused with narcissism, which is a completely different thing. If you really want to understand how attachment plays out in adult relationships, you need to understand its roots in early childhood experiences. Here is a short, broad brushstrokes explanation. Attachment style came from a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby and his colleague Mary Ainsworth, who developed attachment theory in the 1970s. They studied the connection between young children and their primary caregivers. Ainsworth did some core research on what happens when you briefly separate babies from their parents and introduce them to strangers, called the strange situation experiment. This all led them to the theory that when the child learns that the caregiver is reliable and consistent in providing support, they see this as a secure base. It gives them the confidence to gradually explore the world more, knowing they can always return to the safety of the caregiver when they need. The child develops an internal working model about whether the world and relationships are safe or not. When they believe that they are, they develop a secure attachment style, which allows them to form new relationships with confidence and good boundaries. But if the child doesn't develop an internal working model that the world is safe and relationships are reliably supportive, they form connections differently. An insecure attachment style can either rest in an over-reliance on relationships with others, anxious attachment style, or an over-reliance on being self-sufficient and not needing others to feel safe, avoidant attachment style. Then fast forward to the 1980s. Researchers Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver took Bowlby and Ainsworth work and applied it to romantic relationships. What they found is that the same basic behavioral system that drives a child to seek comfort and security from a caregiver also appears in adult romantic relationships. They essentially said that falling in love is at its root an attachment process. Yes, you heard that right. The experience with the primary caregiver affects the internal working model so profoundly that it drives how we form adult romantic relationships. This is why we talk about attachment styles so much in relationship work. Now, does having an anxious or avoidant attachment style mean you had bad parents? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. You can also develop a secure attachment style, even if you had really crappy parents. It's possible because nothing happens in a vacuum. We have different influences in our lives. Different adults become role models for us. Things evolve, and we all have different levels of natural resiliency. Parenting is deeply involved, but it's also more complicated than that. The primary caregiver relationship is the start of the story. It doesn't have to be the whole story. So if you or your partner has an avoidant attachment style, that can look many ways. There's not one pure list of characteristics, and if you're watching this video, you may already have a basic idea what that looks like. But behaviors that can show up consistently include a discomfort with closeness or intimacy, avoiding the expression of vulnerability, and distancing when under stress instead of seeking support. Now, if you're thinking, Chris, those things can be completely natural and could happen for any number of reasons, well, you'd be right. Attachment theory is complex. It's not a straight line of causation. Remember, nothing happens in a vacuum. We're talking about larger trends that repeat over time, not individual examples. So avoidant attachment style is not a diagnosis. That's because it's a characteristic, not something that's inherently wrong with someone. It's one way of understanding the differences between people. That's it. Avoidant attachers in general tend to be more self-sufficient because that's how they preserve safety. To someone who finds safety by connecting with others, that can seem pretty weird, but not any more weird than your strategies may seem to them. But for someone who finds their safety in self-sufficiency, avoiding conflict, and handling stress internally, the demands of a relationship can definitely be an extra layer of stress. To someone who has an anxious or secure attachment style, these can seem like the person may be distant, cold, and uninterested, like they don't care. Avoidant attachers do care, they just show it in different ways that help them feel safe in the world. Let's get into the reasons someone with an avoidant attachment style would still choose a relationship, even if that seems counterintuitive to you. I'm going to give you 4 important things to consider. First, they still have a basic human need for belonging. Isolation is brutal for the human psyche. We learned that in spades during COVID. Researchers have found that avoidant attachers have physiological responses to the stress of isolation. They just tend to suppress conscious awareness of that need. The desire for connection exists. They've just learned to deactivate it, not eliminate it. Second, avoidant is not the same as asexual or asocial. Those early moments in the relationship, before things got too deep, that's where the avoidant attacher thrives. They tend to report high relationship satisfaction in these early stages. It's the sustained intimacy that triggers their distress. Why? Because sustained intimacy equals dependency, and that's the kryptonite for this person. Dependency is the opposite of what helps them feel safe in the world, even when the object of that dependency is really reliable. It's not about that because they're fighting almost a whole lifetime of a completely different belief about the world. Third, they may not have a conscious awareness of their own avoidance. Look, it's not like you're given a colored jersey or a membership card for your 5th birthday. It's just how you learn to survive in the world. Other researchers refer to how the illusion of intimacy shows up. People can maintain a mental narrative of being a good, loving partner while still behaviorally pulling away. Their desire for relationships is often genuine. It's just disconnected from the behavior you experience in them. And don't forget that all connection happens on a spectrum. It's not a binary. Your perception of their willingness to connect is colored by your own needs and tendencies. It's entirely possible you're the first person that they've had talk about these things, and it may be your first experience with this concern as well. And fourth, there's the interaction with social and cultural teaching. We're taught that our job as humans is to partner up. We spend much of our energy in early childhood to this end, so it just seems normal. For an avoidant attacher, the beginning of this can feel great, especially if the partner doesn't demand too much closeness early on. It's not until things get too close and the partner begins to expect deeper levels of connection that things get uncomfortable. Now, this becomes more complex when we realize that there are 2 types of avoidant attachment styles, dismissive and fearful. The dismissive style is usually easier to spot. They lean heavily into independence in both needs and strategies. Behaviorally, they tend to distance themselves because internally, they tend to believe they don't really need those close connections. One researcher wrote about how this shows up in daily life, passively avoiding close relationships and claiming that these relationships are unimportant. They may lean into less personal activities like work or hobbies. Think of the difference in terms of 2 different characteristics, beliefs and behaviors. The dismissive avoidant person embodies distance in terms of both belief and behavior. Again, it doesn't mean they don't value the lighter connections or physical contact. They just don't get on board with the deeper connections internally or externally. The other avoidant type actually craves deeper connection, but the fear of pain overrides this desire and leads them to avoid those deeper connections anyway. Not because they don't value the deeper connection, but because they fear what the closest might mean for them. This fear overrides the potential pain of an unfulfilling connection. The fearfully avoidant person may be more likely to feel anxious or depressed with low self-confidence and fear of rejection. As Bartholomew writes, the dismissing have attained autonomy and a sense of self-worth at the expense of intimacy, while the fearful have difficulties with both autonomy and intimacy. So both struggle with intimacy and connection, but their internal experience is very different. Your experience with them may be equally different. While the dismissive avoidant person may be initially confusing to you, the potential back and forth and emotional instability of the fearful avoidant person may lead to more back and forth in the relationship. If you're more anxiously attached, some of their inclinations may feel familiar to you, but the behavioral result becomes just as problematic when you try leaning into intimacy and they run away from it. The dismissive avoidant leans into independence is best, while the fearful avoidant feels, I want you, but that doesn't feel safe. So what does a relationship with an avoidantly attached person look like? In the beginning, it may feel very normal. The lighter interactions and physical connections may not set off alarm bells because you both feel like things are going great. The secure or anxious person seeks intimacy, and the natural development toward that goal feels right on schedule. But then as things grow closer, they begin to change, don't they? Maybe you sense subtle changes and distancing behaviors. Or maybe something bigger, like that first big I love you that doesn't land at all like you'd hoped. Whatever drives the distancing by your partner, you still feel rejected and hurt because you thought things were going really well. How could you have been so wrong? You may both be at a point where you feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you. While you may feel surprised when your partner says, whoa, too much, they may be secretly asking themselves, what have I gotten myself into here? Both responses can be completely genuine, but very different perspectives on the same disconnect. You wondering why they suddenly pull back, and they're wondering why you had to complicate things when they were going so well. Connected and safe is the gold standard for relationships, but it only works if you both feel connected and safe. As soon as the relationship starts to venture outside that sweet spot, people adapt. Remember, this may not be a conscious recognition, but an intuitive reaction to something they don't necessarily have words for. It may not make the pain of rejection any better for you, but it may help you tell yourself the right story about what's really going on here. That really matters. So you've realized that one of you has an avoidant attachment style and the other one does not, and is causing problems in the relationship. What do you actually do about this? Remember at the beginning of this video when I said that does not have to be a death sentence for the relationship? That's true, but you do need to be strategic to overcome some common pitfalls. It's a classic disconnect, and you need to reconnect if you want to get back on a path you both feel good about. Here's some of my best strategies for helping you get your relationship back on track. First, a healthy dose of compassion for yourself and your partner is a great start. If you pathologize or weaponize someone's attachment style, that moves you away from each other. Remember, you both have an attachment style, and it reflects how you maintain safety. Even if your partner's behaviors are frustrating for you, it doesn't make them wrong or intentionally manipulative. If you really believe your partner's behaviors relate to attachment, then that's been reinforced for them over their whole lives. Patience, persistence, and compassion are your friends in these moments. If you really want to move things forward, there's probably a conversation about attachment styles with your partner in the future, maybe several of them. This is your opportunity to educate yourselves about attachment styles and learn about each other through this lens. When you do this, you can learn to discuss your own attachment style and your partner's with depth and nuance. Any configuration has its challenges, and you can get into yours. If you're not sure about your attachment styles, there are tests a psychologist can use to decide. These are far more reliable than the attachment quizzes you see online. Either way, you can spend time having some real conversations about your needs and your experience with each other. Even if you don't have a deep clinical understanding of your attachment styles, this can help you chart a path forward. Now, if your attempts to talk it out have resulted in more disconnection, stonewalling, and disappointment, I get it. This needs to begin with a plan in mind. Name that and acknowledge that this may be hard for them. If they sense that this is just more of that same feeling stuff, they might just shut down. Leading with honoring their discomfort and committing to keeping it strategy focused might help. Still, feelings are central to this. No getting around that either. With an avoidantly attached person, talking about feelings may often feel unsafe to them. Part of that unsafety may come from a lifetime of being able to avoid those conversations. So even a highly intelligent avoidant partner may not have much of an affective vocabulary. I have a way that might help. I've actually created a really useful feeling words list for you. It's free. You can get it in the link in the description. Many people have found this list helpful because it gives you a list to consult when you need it most. I don't know about you, but when the pressure is on, I sometimes struggle to find the words I need. This free list is there for you to print off and consult to avoid those, oh, that's not what I meant to say, moments that can move us backwards. I encourage you to grab your copy of the list, print it out, and keep it handy for you both to connect by talking about your feelings with less stress over finding the right word. And when you do sit down for these important conversations, don't forget to reach a consensus on the goal. I want to make this work goes a long way to encouraging cooperation and effort. And if you don't think this is going to work, that's pretty important information too. Making it work with an avoidant attacher probably involves both of you learning to step into unfamiliar territory, gently and gradually. They may need to ease their way into more emotionally connective experiences, and you may need to learn how to tolerate a slower pace of the development of the relationship than you really want. If you can both acknowledge you find safety in different ways, you can learn to see your partner for who they are instead of who you want them to be. If you can get there, maybe that can be an important step forward for both of you. Hey friends, thanks for being here, and until next time, be well.